Hi. Hi, everyone. My name is Fanny Tan. I'm a journalist and researcher at the Chaire Raoul Landurand at the Université du Québec à Montréal. I'm very happy to have you here for this live interview. I'm going to do it in English because Mrs. Gill, is pronounced like that? Mrs. Gill speaks English, and as you can hear, this is not my first language, but I'm going to try to do my best. So I'm really happy to present you this, to do this interview because I've been following Ritu GILL online for a while. I'm very, very interested in OSINT, and if you are here interested in OSINT and you haven't see her website, which is called OSINT Techniques, I highly recommend you to check it out because it's full of resources, very, very interesting. So I'm going to present Ritu on my right. She is an intelligence analyst with over 16 years of experience working with Canadian law enforcement. 12 of those years were in the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. During her tenure with the RCMP, she specialized in open source intelligence and worked on high-profile investigations. As part of RCMP's International Capacity Building Program, Ritu trained law enforcement in Bangladesh and India in the use of the internet as an investigative tool. In 2016, Ritu set up a consulting business providing OSINT training and research to law enforcement and related entities across North America. Ritu holds a bachelor's degree in criminology for Kwantlen Polytechnic University and is actively involved in the OSINT community. So welcome, Ritu. Very, very happy to have you here. I'm going to start with the first question. Since 2021, you've been working on an open source project called Tracking Metro Vancouver Gang-Related Shootings. And it's basically an interactive map where we can pinpoint exactly where gang-related shootings, both in residences and in public places, took place throughout Vancouver, but also in some other cities in Canada. A very interesting project. If you want to check it out, I guess it's on your website, very probably.
Yep,
Yes.
it'll be on my website. Can you hear me?
Can you hear her?
Can you guys hear me?
We can't hear
I
her.
can't tell.
Is it?
Okay, can you hear me now? This
Not
is
really,
like
huh? There's no one at the sound. I'm gonna. Sorry about that.
Wait, hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, apparemment dans les micros. Non, dehors. Il n'y a pas de traduction.
Different mic, maybe? Because it did flash right now, but it is on, right?
Là, est-ce qu'on entend?
Testing 1, 2.
Ça marche? Tu peux parler très proche du micro.
Okay, really close to the mic. Okay. All right, thank you for that introduction. Yeah, so what I created was I'm Vancouver-based. What I noticed was we kind of have issues with gangs, a lot of shootings, that kind of thing. And so I wanted to create something to track all the different shootings in Metro Vancouver. And so I created a Google Maps where I track pretty much looking at open source, all the shootings since 2021. And why I started in 2021 was because there was a big gang hit where one of like a top level gangster was gunned down in his parents' basement. And so I started mapping it, and if you actually look at the map, it's divided up into public shootings and residential shootings. And the reason for that is to highlight that it's a public safety concern when it's happening in a public place. So I wanted to highlight how much of an issue it is. And everything I found was from open sources, news media articles, and that kind of stuff.
How do you choose what do you put in your map? Because I've heard there is always the same elements, and I guess it's also very like a sensitive subject, you know? So you find your information in open source. I guess most of them are media, journalistic articles. Do you also use, like what information do you pick and where exactly do you get it for this map?
So what I would do is I would follow, we have certain journalists who are like following the gang conflict in Vancouver very closely, who I would follow them because they are, whether they're tweeting something out on X or on Twitter, they would post that information. Not only that, but you'll get police media releases when there's a shooting related to the lower, we call it the LMD gang conflict, the lower mainland gang conflict. And often in a lot of these news reports, it will say that it's connected to the lower mainland gang conflict. And so that's how I would decipher if I was going to include it on my map or not.
Do you want to exchange mine? Because I think mine is better.
This is really bad. Maybe you'll be able to work it better. Okay, this is better. Oh, wow, this is a lot better. Yeah, this works
Okay,
better.
perfect, great. That's what we want. I was wondering, what are the challenges involved in verifying and authenticating information gathered from open sources?
So one of the things, that is a challenge. So when we come across open source information, we get things like disinformation, right? There's a lot of misinformation, disinformation online. Even if you look at current events right now, you can see that disinformation is rampant, right? And so what we have to do as OSINT people is when we're trying to verify that, it gets quite complicated, and it's not always straightforward. Sometimes it is, and sometimes it isn't. But that is one of our, I would say one of the biggest challenges that I see currently is disinformation online.
I'm guessing that the disinformation is very prevalent in any geopolitical conflict. Right before this interview, we were talking about the Israel-Hamas war right now, which there is an insane amount of disinformation about this war. And I was wondering, how do you, as an OSINTer, how do you figure out what is true and what isn't with all the amount of information and false information that you have on social media?
So fact checking is probably the first thing, because what we get on social media right now is a lot of videos, a lot of photos. There's certain open source techniques that we can use to verify if something is real or if it's fake. There's tools out there. There's things like a simple technique would be like reverse image search. You know, if you see a photo, you can reverse image search it. You can put it into a search engine and to see if it appears somewhere else on the internet. So that's a simple technique, but that's one way that we find out if maybe this photo was from 5 years ago. Because that's what we're seeing a lot right now online, that some of the images and some of the videos are from years ago, and they're actually not from the current conflict, for example. So fact checking, some of the verification techniques would be like reverse image search, geolocation. So if you're seeing something posted online and say they're saying it's in one location, can you verify it's actually that location, right? There are techniques out there, there's open source techniques out there that allow you to do this.
There are so many tools available, and I feel like every week I see new tools created by and for the OSINT community. And I was wondering, do you have some classic tools that you use all the time that are for you, like you cannot work without them?
Yeah, I mean, like the bread and butter of open source intelligence researchers is search engines. And some people are like, oh, that's so basic. But a lot of times people don't know how to use search engines efficiently, because if you put in my name into Google, you're going to get a lot of hits, right? But if you put quotes around my name, it's going to refine the search, right? It's going to bring maybe it down from 100,000 hits to 10,000. So being able to use search engines in a more efficient and effective manner is really helpful for your open source. I always say, you know, it might not be just one tool. Depending on what kind of investigation I'm working on, that's where I'll decide what tool I'm going to use, what I need it for, and so on. Because like you said, there's tools for everything, and every week there is a different tool out. So we have to know how to vet those tools too, because we don't want to use anything. Because I often want to know who's behind the tool before I use it. But a lot of things for geolocation, I would say, for example, would be like you want to be really comfortable with satellite imagery, Google Earth, Google Maps, Street View, Mapillary, which is another source, an open source mapping software, but it will cover parts of the world that aren't covered by Google sometimes. So that's an example as well. But yeah, like in general, I would say there's a lot of different tools. I could talk about tools for a while.
Well, because you're talking about the geolocation and everything, I was wondering, do you have a specialty? Because I feel like a lot of OSINTers have specialties. You know, some are good in like geolocation, others like stalking people. What would be your thing if there is? Do you have one thing that you specialize in, or you're kind of like a jack of all trades?
I would say people searching is probably my niche. Yeah, like I think I'm pretty good at it. People searching, company searching, like businesses. So if it comes to people investigations or business investigations, which leads to so many different things. So you could be looking at a person and end up on a website. I think I'm pretty good with stuff like that too. However, I always tell people I don't have a technical background. A lot of what I learned was by taking courses and learning on my own. But I have been doing this for a number of years, so I feel like I've gathered a lot of different experiences with the different types of files I've worked on. But yeah, so thank you.
I'm sorry, but can you guys hear Ritu talking? Because it's really interesting. Okay, I wasn't sure. I was like, I hope they can
we
hear
have to
that.
check. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. You are also working on a new OSINT tool for capturing online content to make it admissible to court, and that's something that is more and more important in the OSINT community. This idea of being able to gather proof and making it admissible to courts. So can you tell us a little bit more about that project?
Yep. So I have a new tool launching, a new software launching in actually a few days. That said, so what Fanny's mentioning is one of the challenges for OSINT people is we see things online, and if you're investigating something, you want to capture it when you see it, because often people sometimes delete things after they post them, and so if you're like, I'll capture it later, it could be gone. That said, the other part of that is if somebody posts something online, it could be removed by the platform itself, right? There's times where Facebook might flag something or take it down. So what I came up with my business partner was this screen capturing tool that will pretty much meet the standards for court purposes. So it includes metadata, so it has hash values on all the saves. It does have an OSINT knowledge base within it. So it's not just a simple screenshot and walk away. It's like, it's kind of like supposed to be the full meal deal. It'll give you the screen capturing, admissibility for court purposes, but it's also going to give you more features that are built into the software. It is a browser add-on. It's called Forensic OSINT. You can go to the website right now, go to forensicosint.com and sign up. Pretty much in a few days we'll be releasing it, and we'll see how it is. But one of the reasons I'm really passionate about this is I've seen the challenges of meeting that court standard over the years. And so I'm like, why not? I see an issue. Why don't we fill that gap? I've seen other tools out there as well. They do different things. Our tool's going to do something a little different as well.
I'm going to use that to jump on another subject that I find very important, and I don't think that we talk enough, and I hope maybe you have something to say about it. We didn't plan this, but
Okay.
we're freestyling this. I know that a lot of OSINT proof that is found with OSINT is used to prove war crime, war atrocities. And with all the violence that is happening right now, I know that OSINTers are very much, sometimes multiple times a day, subjected to very violent images. And I was wondering if, I think there's a much more like, it's much more important. We talk more about mental health, and that's a very good thing. But what would be your tips for people, for OSINTers or even OSINT amateurs who are watching those images to, keep their sanity?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've worked on files as well in the past where, working on things and not really knowing how it affect me later on. There are definitely things you want to do. If you're working on sensitive investigations, whether it's war crimes, you might see something that could be disturbing. Some of the techniques I apply, and these are really like to the point, but like things like if I'm doing my research on my research computer, and say I'm on a platform like Twitter, and that's where I'm doing the research on something that might pull up graphic content, I don't know. I make sure that video autoplay is not turned on, because I've had that in the past. So I kind of learned that in a really negative way, because almost 10 years ago, I was working on a file and I didn't know that feature, and I ended up seeing a video. It was only like not 5 seconds long. It was the most traumatizing thing I've ever seen in my life. So it's like one of those things where I'm like, okay, I need to do something to make sure I'm not in that situation. Because even if you have to work on a file like that, you shouldn't have to see things that, and if that's something you will see, I always say, like, I make the frame of the video smaller. So don't have it in like a large, don't expand your screen so you see more of it like in your face. Sound is a big part of it. Maybe switching off sound. Having more control of the situation is better. If you're surprised, that's not always so good. But that's been my experience. So, and also just being mindful of that. Hey, if you're working on sensitive stuff, make sure you take the time out for yourself, right? Make sure you're talking to somebody also, right? About, something that you saw that was disturbing. Because I can see how that can really, it can mess people up.
Yeah, definitely. Because, OSINT has been democratized in the last years a lot. A lot of amateur OSINTers are trying to, because it is something that you can really learn on your own, but it's also something that you can learn from people who teach it, like you. And I was wondering, because you've been doing OSINT for a while now, and did you start, when did you start to teach it, and why did you want to teach it?
Yeah, so, the way I got into OSINT it was during my career with RCMP. I kind of fell into it in a way because I wanted to be an analyst. And so I worked my way up. I became a researcher. And through that journey of being a researcher to an analyst, I had opportunities of discovering what OSINT was at that point. And that was a number of years ago. But that journey took me to like, oh, okay, open source is being used in this investigation, or what does this mean? How is this being applied? I got really interested. I was a little bit of a keener. I was younger, so more of a keener probably. So I started asking questions. I started asking for things that other people weren't asking for. So I would ask to work files people didn't want to touch. So I would get experience across the board on all sorts of different things. Even if things were hard, even if a file, because the names were complicated, I would still take those on because I thought that I would learn more. So once I started getting into it, was working on different files, I had the opportunity to travel internationally with the RCMP to India and Bangladesh to teach. So that was a request that they asked me. They're like, would you be interested? Initially, before that, they wanted me to train local people, so I did a train the trainer kind of event. And then after that was kind of a, I guess, success, they said, do you want to go on this international trip and go teach some international partners? And so I did that. So that's kind of how that kind of rolled out, I guess.
And what do you think it takes to become a good OSINT analyst?
That's
to be one, so just tell me.
Oh, okay. The step by step. I would say like getting actual experience. So like you can learn, you can take courses, but you definitely want to apply what you're learning, because I've taken courses over the years, but if I don't apply what I've learned, I'm not going to really figure out that technique. I would say, to take a course, but then go apply what you learned. Like, go use the tools. I tell people that are starting out, if you want to look at what your own digital footprint looks like, why don't you Google your name? Why don't you Google your email address, your phone number? What's out there about you? And so I'm like, because you can think of yourself as your own target, right? And so if you look at yourself and you start searching and you find all this information, you know, imagine what could be out there on another person, right? I feel like actual getting hands-on experience is what gets you better. So I would say I did a lot of reading. I took a lot of courses, but then I also self-taught myself. Like there's books out there. There's a lot of free blogs and that kind of stuff that you can read on and learn about. So you have a lot of options for sure.
Are you still learning as of today? Is that something that you're still progressing in, or is everything already figured out for you?
No.
You know how to do everything?
No, definitely not. I would say I'm still learning. I have a lot to learn. There's a lot of technical parts of OSINT that I'd like to get better at. I'm really good at certain things, but I know where I need to improve. And honestly, like I think I'm kind of forever a student, you know? You're always learning. I never want to sit there and be like, hey, I know everything. I know a lot. I do a lot of public talks about OSINT, how I've used it in investigations, but I could never sit up here and be like, hey, I know it all. Like, I'm still learning, and I love learning from people, so often if I'm sitting in front of a crowd teaching them something, I'll always walk away learning something from them as well, which is, I think, awesome.
We have about 5-7 minutes left, so I was wondering, is there another subject you'd like to talk about, or maybe we can open the question for the public?
We can ask questions, maybe.
Yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Do we have any questions in the room?
Any questions?
Yes. Merci, Jean-Philippe.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for this. I very enjoyed this. I was wondering what your thoughts are in regards to the intersection of open source intelligence gathering techniques and journalism. It feels that in Canada at least, it's at an all-time low, the confidence that people have in journalistic institutions. And this is not a diss towards Fanny, who's a journalist, but I mean, might as well ask that question.
Right.
You know, organizations like Bellingcat are doing sometimes a better job at journalism than most traditional legacy media organization. I don't want to be that guy to ask, where do you see yourself in 5 years in regards to journalism or the OSINT movement, but where do you see the OSINT movement being in about 5 years in regards to journalism?
I mean, I think that's a great question. I think at the end of the day, like, I feel like we're always playing catch up. Like, I feel like we are in general behind the mark, I guess you could say. Like, so when I look at something like Bellingcat, who does an amazing job, but they're also very niche in what they want to do, and they're really good. No doubts about that. The way I see OSINT in 5 years or whatnot, I'm going to see it more mashed in with even journalism. Because, like, I do see parts of it, but then I don't see enough where I'd want to see more, because I think it's very interesting. I think people can learn a lot from even the OSINT community. Journalists, I'm going to say they already do learn a lot of the open source, say, techniques and stuff, but maybe they're spread thin about, you know, what they need to focus on, right? Whereas, like, if you have, like, an organization like Bellingcat that's really, like, focused on maybe a particular subject, it could look like, it could look a little different, their outcome, right? That said, I feel that OSINT is going to definitely expand. I don't see it going the other way. I feel like it's going to get better. It's going to be, people are going to get better at it, because the more people that learn about it and know what it is, I feel you can't really ignore it, you know? So yeah, those are my 2 cents on that.
Thank you. Do we have another question before the end? Don't be shy. No? All right. Well, thank you so much, Ritu. I'm very happy to have talked to you today. Very interesting knowledge, and you can we join you? Do you have a OSINT Techniques, her website?
Yeah, mostly if you follow me online, you Google my name, I'll probably come up. My company's name is OSINT Techniques. OSINT techniques on Twitter. That is mostly where I post, and on LinkedIn. You can add me if you want. I'm on other platforms as well, but those are my two biggest platforms, I would say. Twitter, I still call it Twitter, by the way. I refuse to call it X. But yeah, no, Twitter and LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys being here.